Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. This video I'm very excited for because we have another big unboxing book haul. We all know I love to buy books. I love to read books. It's the cycle of the bookish life, if you know what I mean. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. Starting of course with the books I picked out for the month of June from Book of the Month, who I'm also partnering up with for this video. If you guys are not familiar with Book of the Month, they're an online bookish subscription service. Every single month they curate a selection of books from a variety of different authors and voices in the community. Always new releases, always hardcover, and always sent directly to your door. If you're not interested in any of the titles that month, it's super easy to skip, and they also have really cool add-on titles as well. And honestly, I'm always just delighted by the selections every single month, and now they also have audiobooks, which is amazing. Per usual, I do have a very special offer code. If you use the code BREEZE, you're able to get your first book for only $9.99, again for a brand new hardcover. A fantastic deal. But without further ado, let's chat through the two books I picked out for the month of June. The first book I picked up is The Lion Women of Tehran, and this is the same author who wrote The Stationery Shop, which I feel like is one of the most beloved books on the internet, and a book that's also been on my personal TBR for years. So now that she has a new release out, I definitely need to marathon both of these books ASAP. And this is said to be an epic new novel of friendship, betrayal, transformation, set across 3 different decades in Iran. Specifically, we follow our 2 main characters who meet for the first time as 2 young girls at school. Both of them are lonely, and they find a lot of solace and love with each other, sharing a lot of interests, and in general they just have a lot of fun. However, though, these 2 girls drift apart when one is able to re-enter their very privileged life and lifestyle, and these 2 girls don't meet until many years later as now young women, which alters the course of both of their lives significantly. This is said to be a beautiful coming-of-age story centering friendship, and I also really appreciate that it covers a large swath of time. Second book I picked up is Margot's Got Money Troubles, and this is by the same author who wrote The Knockout Queen, so another really big release for this summer. This is said to be blisteringly funny and full of sharp insight, and we follow our main character Margot, who is the daughter of a Hooters waitress and an ex-pro wrestler, and she's always known that she was going to have to make it on her own. She enrolls in a junior college in her local area, and she never planned to have an affair with her English professor, but it just sort of happened, and unfortunately, while the affair was brief, the results and consequences was not, because now Margot is pregnant. Dropping out of school and desperately trying to figure out a new cash flow, Margot is on the brink of eviction when her father, again the ex-pro wrestler, moves in with her. From there, she thinks of a new plan, and that is to create an OF account, and she begins to use advice from her father's wrestling background to craft and create a character that people will fall in love with and will find compelling. In this story, we're following Margot as she navigates adult life, motherhood, and trying to make enough to survive. Again, I think this novel balances a lot of heart with humor, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think this is going to be a very entertaining read. Alrighty guys, those are the 2 books I picked up from Book of the Month this month. Again, if you guys want to learn more, I'll have a link down to their site below as well as the offer code, but without further ado, let's go ahead and jump back into the rest of the books I picked up recently. The first book I grabbed should not be a surprise, and that is Howling Dark by Christopher Ruccio. This is the second book to the Sun Eater series. I recently read the first book, which is called The Empire of Silence, a few weeks ago, and for the most part, I enjoyed it. This is a sci-fi series that's definitely taking the internet by storm. It's super popular. So many people sing its praises. I've been having a lot of fun reading it and checking it out for myself. Overall, I found the first one to be pretty enjoyable. It wasn't perfect, but I did really kind of enjoy the ride, and I feel like it ended very strong. So I wanted to grab the sequel so I could have it on my shelf to pick up soon. These books are definitely not short. They're also a little dense, but I do feel like they craft a pretty compelling sci-fi story. And in this story, we're introduced to our main character Hadrian, and he is sort of recounting his entire life and story to us. Hadrian is a very notorious figure in the galaxy, or so we are told. He basically appears to us to be some sort of really powerful warrior or figure, and was kind of responsible for a variety of planet-ending scenarios. Some people laud him as a hero, some people name him as a villain, and we're told the truth is somewhere in the middle. From there, we kind of go back to Hadrian's childhood, and in book 1, we're basically reading kind of a origin story of who he is, and at the very end, it sort of began to get a little more political. So book 2, I imagine the world will be cracked open quite a bit more. The concept and setting of this book is really interesting. It's obviously very sci-fi, but it also definitely has a medieval fantasy lens to it as well, and I think these 2 things together really make a setting that I'm personally enjoying quite a bit. I'm curious to see where this series is going to take us next. I definitely plan to read it soon before I forget too much information, because there was a lot thrown at us in book 1, but yes, The second book to this hyper uber popular sci-fi series is now mine. Next up is the first book to a new high fantasy series that I've heard some decent buzz about, and just in general, I'm always trying to read new fantasy books to let y'all know if they're worth the pickup or not, and that is the Silver Blood Promise: The Last Legacy by James Logan. Again, this is said to be for fans of Joe Abercrombie and Scott Lynch, two authors I personally really enjoy, and this story follows our main character Lucan, who is a card-sharp academy dropout, and due to a duel that went badly, recently estranged from an ancient noble house. So now he spends his days drinking cheap wine and setting up card games to basically win some cash. However, though, he's given fresh purpose when he discovers that some unknown assailants actually killed his father. Now sort of robbed from the ability to make amends with his family, he sets out to unravel and solve the mystery surrounding his father's death. This results in him traveling to a very notorious city full of merchant princes, and things get complicated very, very quickly. I'm hoping this is snarky and fun and having a main character I can definitely root for. Based on the author comparisons, I feel like this might lean a little bit into the gray morality space, and I'm hoping just for a tricky, fun time, but we shall see. A new fantasy book has entered the space. Next up, I picked up a bind-up, and one I'm definitely planning to read soon, and that is Binti by Nendia Korafor. I love Nendia Korafor's writing so much. I've read some of her short stories and her full-length novels over the years. Just her writing style, characters, and worlds that she's able to create are just so unique and immersive. And this is a bind-up of a complete trilogy, so I feel like it'll be just a perfect one to pick up. And my friend Max recently has read all three of these books, and he absolutely loved them, so it's really inspired me to get to these sooner rather than later. The setup of the series sounds incredibly intense, but in it we're introduced to our main character Binti, and Binti comes from a small community, and she's sort of offered an opportunity of a lifetime. Binti is gifted in mathematics and has a fantastic skill with something called the astrolabe, so she's given the opportunity to travel across space to attend this really prestigious university. Her parents are not so sure if she should leave, but they sort of reluctantly let her go. Binti herself is excited for this opportunity. However, though, as she's traveling to this new university, this spaceship is attacked by aliens, and Binti is left as the only survivor. Now forced to live amongst these alien people on this spaceship, Binti has to make it the 5 remaining days to get to her destination. But I think over the course of these 5 days, things really change in a lot of Binti's perspective and life. Again, Nendia Korafor is one of my favorite writers in the sci-fi fantasy space. I also feel like I'll be able to read this quickly, not only because the plot sounds super intense, but just in general, it's not very long. Alrighty, let's open up the first package here. Oh yes. Okay, this is exciting. So the book in that box is Nolan by Michael J. Sullivan. Obviously, I am a big lover of Michael J. Sullivan on this channel. I read his entirety of the Legends of the First Empire, and I'm currently 2/3 of the way through the R'lyeh Revelations series by this author. So all that to say is I'm already looking forward to the next series to pick up from him. All of his books in series are distinct, but they all take place within the same world and universe. The Legends of the First Empire series is an ancient set fantasy series set thousands and thousands and thousands of years prior to his next most popular series, which is the R'lyeh Revelations. This book is the first book to what I want to say is a trilogy, but each book I think is a standalone novel, kind of focusing in on some characters and families that we know quite well, sort of a bridge novel between the Legends of the First Empire and the R'lyeh Revelations series to give us context and information to what happened to the Empire between point A and point C that we've read so far. I really love the world that Michael J. Sullivan has crafted within all of his fantasy series. So I feel like this series will be not only fantastic for adding additional world building and context, but I'm also just personally curious, and I know he's going to center some great characters that I will fall in love with. I've heard great things about this bridge trilogy, so I decided to grab book 1 so I can have it on my shelf for when I finish the R'lyeh Revelations. The next book I have to show off is a very beloved, very popular read, and that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. A couple weeks ago, I kind of went on a contemporary romance readathon with this author, and I read 3 of her books back to back to back, and I purchased this book actually midweek, and I've already read it. I'm happy to report that it was very fun and very cute, and I can see why this one in particular is one of Emily Henry's most popular books. But if you're not familiar, Book Lovers by Emily Henry kind of turns the small town romance on its head, and it's also kind of a rivals to lovers romance story, which is a bunch of fun. But this story follows our main character Nora, and Nora is a literary agent living in New York City. She loves her job, she's very passionate about her job, she also loves her sister, She has a small circle of people in her life, and she's kind of looked at as sort of a frigid individual, kind of a misunderstood boss babe, if you will. And a specific phenomenon has happened to Nora over and over and over again, and that is her boyfriends visit a small town, and then they fall in love with some woman there, a bakery owner, a hotel owner, and then they leave Nora for this person. At the beginning of the story, Nora meets with an editor to basically pitch her client's book, and they very quickly do not get along at all. Fast forward at the beginning of the story, Nora is going on a sister trip, and her sister has surprised her by taking her to a small town where they're going to live for the next month to not only reconnect and bond, but to also kind of break Nora's like small town romance curse, if you will. And lo and behold, who does she run into? That very annoying editor from that lunch many months ago. From there, we watch Nora and Charlie begin to have this back and forth with each other. There's a lot of chemistry, there's lots of humor, there's also a really beautiful sister relationship at the heart of this book. And again, the small town setting is great, and I love the reversal of a lot of the known romance tropes. Emily Henry can write the heck out of a summer romance, and this was a delight. But yeah, I also bought it very recently. Alrighty, let's open this box next. Oh yes. Alrighty, so this book was actually a pre-order and one I'm so excited about, and it is I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons by Peter S. Beagle. Peter S. Beagle wrote The Last Unicorn, which I read earlier this year and really adored. The Last Unicorn is known as like one of those classic fantasy tales and stories. It's a very whimsical, quest-centered story that has a lot of heart and a dash of darkness. It just has this sort of classic, traditional fairy tale-esque element to it that I personally really enjoyed. So when I saw that Peter S. Beagle was coming out with a new book, I knew I wanted to pick it up right away. It also just sounds just as weird and charming as I would expect from this author. And I must say that this book is so beautiful as well. Look at these end pages. But the setup of this fantasy story is that dragons are very common in this backwater kingdom known as Belmontegane. Dragons themselves come in all shapes and sizes, from the very small, like mouse-like shape and size, to the huge, ginormous, kind of epic size, which are considered to be fabled kings, and these dragons have not been seen in ages. Our main character, Robert, has inherited a job that he has hated from his father, and that is to be a dragon exterminator. At the beginning of the story, Robert is hired by the royal family to basically disinfest the royal castle of all dragons that exists within it, because the princess has like a very important suitor coming and they want to like present their best. And then from there, it says what happens next is not the fairy tale you may be expecting. And honestly, I am so intrigued and so curious. I feel like this book is going to be full of wit and humor, but I also feel like he balances his stories with a lot of heart as well. Again, I love The Last Unicorn. I love classic stories like this, so I can't wait to pick this up. The next book I picked up I know is going to be utterly heartbreaking, but I also feel like it could be a possibly new favorite read of all time. Tokyo Uneo Station by Yu Miri. This is a story that follows the ghost of a homeless man who has been haunting a very busy station in Tokyo for years. Unable to find rest, he's basically doomed to live in the park nearby. But through his eyes, we see the daily life of not only people visiting and existing within this station, but we also trace the ghost Kazu's life from the beginning to the end. Said to be a powerful masterwork from one of Japan's most brilliant outsider writers, it is also said to be a look into a quiet yet illuminating, devastating, and essential existence. Again, I've heard such fantastic things about this book in particular, but I saw this as a recommendation blurb by a local bookseller in one of my favorite bookshops, so I decided to pick it up and add it to my shelf. Another book I picked up recently I'm so excited for because it's a new release by one of my favorite authors, and that is The Fox Wife by Yongshi Chu. I have read this author's two other historical fantasy stories and really enjoyed them both, and I feel like this is just going to be another fantastic mix of like a historical setting and magic and fantasy and a super lush and incredible writing style. This is a story that centers the mythos surrounding fox spirits, and it also brings together a lot of different perspectives and characters, but it's set specifically in 1908 in Manchuria. The story opens with the discovery of a courtesan found dead, frozen in a doorway, and the locals begin to think that has something to do with the fox spirit. From there, we're introduced to one of our main characters, Bao, who is a detective who's been hired to find out the identity of this woman. We're also introduced to a family who owns a Chinese medicine shop that also has had a curse for years. That curse is the eldest son of their family always perishes and dies, but when a new servant enters their household, things begin to change, or does it? And that servant is named Snow, and she herself is on a path for vengeance, trying to find her lost child. Again, all of these characters' lives and paths become very much intertwined, and I also think all interconnected to the mythos and folklore surrounding the fox spirit. Again, I love how Yang Shichu effortlessly combines elements of history and magic and myth and just these mesmerizing stories that I have enjoyed so much. So yes, this is her newest release, so obviously I had to buy it. Alrighty, we are on our last package to show off. Alrighty, so my last book to show off is another very anticipated release and one that I also pre-ordered. That is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. I really enjoy this author. He's also written The Devil in the Dark Water, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Both of these books are kind of like classic whodunit murder mysteries. I feel like this author does such a great job of writing mysteries, which is my personal preference, but he does tend to add like a slight magical supernatural element to them, which I also feel like just elevates the entire reading experience. This book is set on an island, and outside this island there was a deadly fog that basically surrounded the world, killing anyone it touched. On this island though, it's idyllic. It's a utopia. There's 122 villagers and 3 scientists, and everyone is happy to live and work here and follow the rules, including their nightly curfew, until horror strikes the island with the discovery of one of the scientists having been horribly stabbed to death. And they learned that this murder was actually triggered by the lowering of security on this island, and basically it's up to everyone on this island to solve this murder, and they have 107 hours, and if they don't solve it, all of the fog will basically surround this island, killing everyone on it. Again, it sort of has that very interesting mix of like a little bit of supernatural, but really using like a classic and then there were none sort of setup. Who can you trust? What happened? There's so many mysteries here to unpick and learn. I just really enjoy this author's like concepts and writing. I love a whodunit style murder mystery story, and I feel like this will be like a perfect summer read. Alrighty guys, those are all the books I picked up recently. Again, big shout out to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!